Hello and welcome to Fearless DIY Music. My name is Tristan Lass, and today I'm joined by my dear friend Kevin Gamble. He and I are going to discuss a topic today, but first off, I think Kevin wants to highlight some of the most recent content from the previous week. And so, Kevin, take it away, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, thanks, Tris. Great to be here as always. Good to see you again. Some good stuff on the content on the channel lately, including a good video the other day, a chat with your friend Colin about songwriting. So never want to get too far away from the creative process. That's a good one to check out. But I wanted to specifically highlight a video you put up the other day, an equipment review video for the MXR Eddie Van Halen flanger pedal. We've all seen equipment review videos, but I didn't want people to just skip over this one if that specific model of pedal didn't catch their eye, because you're on Fearless DIY watching things here, so there's always going to be an interesting spin about what is this, how is this really useful, and how can you apply this to your own creative process. And so it's more than just an equipment video talking about the features of the pedal. It's really a video about flanger and flangers and flanging as an effect, and how overlooked it is and how much potential it has as an effect. And I agree with that. I think that flanging has kind of fallen a little bit out of fashion. I don't know the exact reason. I suspect it has to do with the way a lot of music is made these days, where people stack up 40 different tracks of guitar needlessly, I in my opinion, in their DAW, and you can't have something like flange in that, or it will become, unmanageable by the copy and paste grid standards of DAW music making. But, the name is right there on the pedal, Eddie Van Halen, with just one track of guitar, and then the echo of that guitar panned off to the side, made a bigger and more legendary guitar sound than pretty much anything you're going to find today, that sort of irons out the creative opportunities that a flanger pedal provides. So anyway, I encourage everyone to go check that video out and get a glimpse of why flanging is maybe more than meets the eye. Do you have anything else to add to that, Tris? Based on, you covered it pretty well in the video, but why should anyone consider flanging if they're already using the sort of safer, more conventional effects?
Well, I discovered the miracles of flange because I didn't have any other modulation pedals for a long time. I had it before I had a phaser. I had ditched chorus long before I got my flanger, and when I got my flanger in the mid-90s, the first effect sound that I came up with on it on my own was the kind of Leslie rotary thing, and I demonstrate 3 primary tones in that video that show that this pedal can do a rotary, and it can do the jet plane thing, which is awesome and incredible. That's great both for solos and for outros and for staccato picked, rhythm parts to give it more, texture and like a wave in a more satisfying way, I think, than a phaser offers. And then the final setting that I demonstrate is that you can get some shimmery chorus-like sounds with it as well. I did not have a chorus pedal forever because I just used my MXR 117. And having the EVH version is cool because you got the button, so you can have one preset to, like, I keep mine to a rotary setting, and then I hit that button and I've got my jet plane. So please do watch the video. I do show how, a singular pedal can actually cover 3 pedal spots on your modulation section of your board if necessary. I think it has a satisfying phaser effect as well. So I just love flange, and that's why I made the video, and I advise you to go and check it out.
And that's a great example of the DIY ethos, is that you never would have found all this out if you had, all the options available to you right from the start. You discovered all these options out of necessity because you had a flanger pedal, and you had to find out what it could do because it's all that you had, and you found out ways to turn it into something that worked for you. So that's applicable to everyone with what they've got.
Absolutely, and for a few years, that was my only modulation effect, and it was the old MXR gray box. So anyway, now that we got the flanging thing out of the way, let's go ahead and hop into our topic. I wanted to talk about practicing. All of us have to practice at some level to be able to play our instruments or to create anything. You have to, do it. and sometimes do it many times before you have an end result that you feel like is presentation worthy to show other people. So my question today is basically, does practice make perfect? I want to start off by saying that my relationship with practicing has been interesting over the years. I seem to go through short bursts of very intense study where I'm very, very disciplined, and I run my scales. I practice theory by, writing chord progressions using, the 1 through 7, cheat code. And I do all these things to unlock the mysteries of diminished and augmented chords and things like that, and how they work with modes and how they work with So anyway, I go through periods like that, and then I go through long periods, which I'm in one right now, where I hardly practice at all. And then I do play, but I'm not doing anything disciplined. I'm just, messing around. And what I came across over the past week or so is that I'm in a rut now. All of a sudden, I've quit practicing in a meaningful way, and now I'm just kind of playing the same stuff over and over again, and none of it's really challenging me. So in my own mind, I'm like, now I have that in the back of my brain barking at me, going, you probably need to start practicing again. And I think every musician and every creative wrestles with this idea of practice. It seems like something that's just like, do I really need to run that scale again? Or do I really need to, I already know how to do a bunch of stuff, so why do I need to practice? So, that's why I wanted to cover this topic. And I've got a few things to talk about, and then we'll have Kevin kind of talk about his approach. And then, so the first thing I want to cover is, when is it enough practice? What is enough? Do you need to set like amount of time per day? Do you have a specific topic that you want to cover, and you want to, just go ahead and just go all in on one thing? What is enough practice? And I find that for myself, enough practice is, I need to do it for at least 15 minutes a day, I think. If I'm doing that much practicing, just straight up, either running scales or working on new chords or just, working on some theory things, that will keep my foot in the water enough, and I'll usually end up playing longer than that. So that's one question to ask yourself. What is enough practice? Is there, can you burn out? I think you can burn out on practice if you do it too much and don't focus on other more creative aspects. And let's see if there's something else. I already covered that. Is there such a thing as too much practice? I think there is. I think that you can get stale. I think that you can sit there and get to the point where you just create a new rut rather than trying to expand your horizons. All right. Next two things, and then I'll let Kevin kind of come. Kevin, do you want to touch on that before I move on? Maybe that would be better.
No, either way is great, but I wanted to, something you said in passing at the start of that, I think is really important, regardless of what structure or intention someone comes up with for practice. You talked about the at least 15 minutes part, and you said that once you start, you'll probably keep going. And I think that to me is huge. It's like whatever your approach to practice is, don't have it be something that keeps you from starting, because once you start, you're probably going to continue. And once you continue, you're going to either get better or stumble across something really valuable and important that you wouldn't have otherwise if you didn't start. So I'd say that's a real important thing to highlight up front, is make your practice something that's approachable and available so you can start. Once you start, all the good things follow. But yeah, this is great stuff for, just having some awareness of what makes practice work or not.
Yeah, trying to remove those barriers up front. That's why I try to keep my entry point that low, where it's just like, okay, 15 minutes. I can find 15 minutes on almost any given day where I can just sit and I can run some scales or do whatever. Okay, and then I'm saying running scales. What do you want to practice? I mean, I think you should leave that very fluid. I think that having something very dogmatic is, once again, putting a barrier in front of yourself. You could pick something as simple as like, oh, I'm going to work on diminished triads today just because I don't feel like I have those under my fingers, and just leave it at that and not be like, oh, I've got to tackle my entire scale ritual before I get to that or whatever. I think that being fluid and flexible with what you are going to practice is really important, because then it'll keep it fresh and it keeps you from, once again, hitting into that rut or it becomes drudgery. I don't think that's the goal. And then I'm hitting this list just one after the other. Goals. What is your goal for practicing? Are you out to get faster? Are you out to be able to play better with others and improvise better by having more theory under your fingers, where when you hear a chord progression, you know what to do? My goal for practicing is for songwriting. I want to write new ideas. So to do that, I want to practice a lot. And I practiced a lot before I recorded my album, because I don't want to do multiple takes. I want to try to get things as quickly as possible when I'm recording. So I practice a ton leading up to the recording process of just working on the parts and working on the song. So set your own goal. Maybe your goal is to be able to jam with others. Maybe your goal is to write. Maybe your goal is just to be as proficient a player as possible, mastering a blues scale to the point where you can play over any progression for a long period of time with fresh ideas constantly popping. There's all sorts of different approaches. So you should have something in mind when you sit down to practice. Sometimes it is just good just to move your fingers around if you don't have a goal. But having a goal, I think, is important, keeps you motivated. And that leads right to purpose. What is the purpose of practicing? In my mind, I always want to get better. That's just the thought. I figure that we're on a long enough timeline. There's lots of musicians out there now who have proven that you can go to the grave and still be trying to become better, and achieving that. So I think that there is a purpose to practicing that transcends, just, I'll get really good and then it'll all go away. I think that it compounds upon itself and it builds. And I think that we can carry that through our whole lives, which is great. That way you're not always thinking, I used to be able to play, be forward thinking. And then finally, breaks. I do take breaks in practicing. I'm currently in one. I want to get out of it, though. I think that sometimes it is good just to cleanse the palate and go ahead and just give yourself that luxury as well. Because then, once again, you don't want to get into a rut, create complete drudgery. And then my final little saying or thought is that, I don't think practice makes perfect whatsoever, but I think practice makes for preparation. You're prepared for more eventualities, musically or creatively, if you are practicing and do have a lot of practice under your belt, because then you can, you won't be as daunted. You'll find that there's more doors open to you if your fingers or your brain or whatever is able to be flexible, fluid, and have a lot of things at your disposal at any given moment. So, practice makes preparation. All right, Kevin, anything that you about your approach? I know that was a lot, but I just figured I'd go.
That was, everyone needs to, everyone who has kind of a muddled relationship with practice needs to loop that segment right there, and it really sums it up. And, I like that you hit on, the practice makes perfect thing, because perfection is an unrealizable ideal. And if you can play some specific thing perfectly without any issues or without any challenges or without even thinking about it, then, you're not really learning at that point. You're just rehearsing. You're just, and that's okay. That's part of, what
that's part of it
enjoy
too, yeah.
about playing any musical instrument is being able to play something. And so it's okay to spend time with that, because that feels like the point a lot of the time, is I've been struggling with this and now I can do it. So I want to be able to enjoy doing it, which is great. But to the larger point you mentioned about intention and purpose, I think that's something that's become a little more nebulous over time these days, especially where what is the purpose of me playing an instrument or making music or things like that? We're a little bit more on our own than we used to be, where it used to be a fairly cut and dry kind of thing. It's like I have to be able to play guitar this well in order to play with other people, because that was the currency of the instrument. And you play with other people, you learn cover songs, you create or learn a bit of original material, you learn it well enough to record it. It was a pretty linear path. You have to be able to play it live. Definitely, that was one of the earliest things you had to do. But now it's all over the map where, some people play live music, some people never play outside the box of, their social media account. And so
some people don't play outside of their DAW.
Yeah, there's kind of an infinite field of different applications now. And so getting a sense of intention of what the purpose is for you, what you're hoping to get out of this, it can be kind of a heavy responsibility when you're starting out in this kind of setting, because you don't really know the potential outcomes of starting to play or where it's going to take you. But so that's why having some idea of what you want to be and what you want to get out of this, and even if it's just as simple as I want to be able to do what I hear in my head or what I'm hearing on the speakers or something like that, and what do I need to do to get there. But having a balanced approach, having a variety of things to focus on that you can switch between, and not devaluing the value of just time spent doing it. You talked about sometimes just wiggling your fingers. Obviously you don't want that to be the only thing you do, but just time on any instrument in any setting has a cumulative effect. So what keeps you connected to the process, what keeps you coming back and doing it again and again and again, is going to have a cumulative effect. But you touched on a lot of your comments about some aspect of music in general, and I think that's a really valuable thing to work into practice. Once I started working on sight reading the bass clef in my bass practice, and that opened doors to some really interesting content that I've never played before. I started learning some jazz melody lines, like some Charlie Parker and Louis Armstrong melody lines on the bass, and that was fascinating because it immediately forced me to play in a way that my instinct and my normal approach would never take me. Note combinations, ways of moving across the fretboard. So I would reinforce that as well. It's like work in some kind of practice of music itself, because it will take you outside of your comfort zone, and it will take you someplace that is valuable and opens doors for you. And also, the other day, a couple days ago, I was reading an old mid '80s guitar magazine, and they had a column by Steve Vai, who was saying, one day he sat down and he said he wedged a shoe into one of the pedals of a Taurus, Moog Taurus foot pedal, and just droned an A tone, turned on a drum machine, and said, for the next 3 hours, I'm just going to bend notes. I'm just going to see everything I can do with bending notes and nothing else. And then he got a whole column out of explaining what came out of that and some of the things he discovered and some of the things to try. And it's like, in addition to everything else, don't forget that element of just exploring. I think sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle these days with our sort of frantic schedules and the demands of life. But a lot of us, that lack of a fixed musical context that I described earlier, it gives us the opportunity to do that if we want. Just sit down, and if you've got the physical time available, just give yourself an open-ended time to see where something goes, whether it's technique or creativity or anything, applying something you've learned. But don't forget that pure creative element as well. Writing something, just seeing where your mind takes you. That can be one of those things where if you just start, you're probably going to continue, and if you continue, you're going to come up with something that makes you really happy.
Absolutely. And, and it keeps you playing. And I think that's a great moment to stop, especially with that Steve Vai anecdote. That is wonderful. Just exploring, just trying to improve and to try to come up with new ideas. I mean, that's really kind of what it's all about. And that's what separates us from the machines, So, we can come up with an angle that maybe they can't. Yes. So anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you've made it to this point in the video, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Shares and comments. Comment section. Jump in. Is there anything that you do practicing that you think would be of value for others to think about? Anything that we didn't cover that you think is really valuable? We'd love to see it in the comments section. So hit subscribe and we'll see you next time. Take care.